Alright guys, welcome back to the Guitar Max channel. So, something happened in the news recently that I think shows that the traditional concept of rock stars is on the way out, and podcasters are essentially the new rock stars. So this has to do with Neil Young and Spotify, and we'll get into the details of this here in just a second, but for me the big question on my mind is, what does this mean for the status of musicians in our society? Is the cool factor of being a rock star faltering? If you want the rock star lifestyle, should you be a podcaster instead of a musician? Let's see if we can answer some of those questions. Okay, so I've got an article up here and we're going to dive deep into this, but real quick guys, if you enjoy videos like this, checking out guitars and of course staying up on all the latest guitar news in the guitar universe, and you have not already subscribed, please consider subscribing right now. Okay, so there are a lot of articles about this issue right now, and the article I have up here is from the payments.com website. They're sort of a financial news website. It was actually pretty difficult to find an article that wasn't super biased in either direction on this issue, but this one seems pretty much down the middle, and as usual, I will have a link to this article down in the video description below. Okay, so from payments.com, says here, comes a time for Neil Young to split from Spotify over Dust Up with Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Hey, my, Neil Young is leaving Spotify. Among the most storied of all classic rockers, the voice and guitar behind ballads and anthems from Heart of Gold to Rockin' in the Free World can't abide keeping platform company with the Joe Rogan Experience, JRE, the world's top-rated podcast with an estimated per-episode audience of 11 million listeners. So, Young delivered an ultimatum. Spotify didn't blink. On Tuesday, January 25th, overlapping headlines created a feedback loop that Young's guitar tech would admire as news broke of letters the artist sent to Spotify and posted on his website demanding the streaming service drop the Joe Rogan Experience podcast over what he believes is COVID-19 misinformation. It goes on here. As is being widely reported, a letter posted Tuesday on Young's website addressing publisher Hypnosis and label Warner Records Reprise, then deleted, read, I want you to let Spotify know immediately today that I want all my music off their platform. They can have Rogan or Young, not both. I am doing this, and this is what he's saying here. I am doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them. Please act on this immediately today and keep me informed of the time schedule. And then it says here, and this is really the key to this whole thing, it says, Spotify has signaled that it will remove Young's music. Now, the article goes on here to talk about some other things that Neil Young has been involved in, like 15, 20 years ago. In the early 2000s when he was against like Napster and the early file sharing platforms for file sharing music and stuff. But the real nuts and bolts of this issue is that Neil Young came out and he issued this ultimatum, like he says on here. You can have Joe Rogan or Neil Young, but you cannot have both. Neil Young clearly does not want to be on the same platform as Joe Rogan. You know, he disagrees obviously with some of the things that Joe Rogan is saying, and not just Joe Rogan, but some of the guests that he has had on his podcast. And so because of that, he doesn't want to be on the same platform. Now, the really fascinating part of all this, and my whole point of this video, is that Spotify didn't even consider this. I mean, it was an easy decision. If they have to choose between Joe Rogan and Neil Young, and they say, okay, well, Neil Young's music is not going to be on the platform anymore. It was an easy decision for them. Now, why is that? Okay, that's really the important thing here. If you look at the numbers here, Neil Young gets around 6 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Now, 6 million, that's a lot. Okay, obviously, he's a veteran artist, very popular artist. You know, he's been involved in not just his own music, but different bands and stuff over the years. But as popular as he is, and as big of a number as 6 million is, Joe Rogan gets around 11 million listeners per episode, and he does 3 to 5 episodes per week. If we go with a very conservative estimate and we say he does 3 episodes per week and 4 weeks per month, that's about 132 million listeners per month. 132 million, last time I checked, is significantly more than 6 million. So from Spotify's perspective, Joe Rogan is much more popular than Neil Young. Now there's another issue here that I haven't seen many people talking about, and that is the profitability of music versus podcasts. On most of these streaming and even the older download services, the platform gets about 30% of the income for the music. The other 70% is going towards royalties and the record company, and eventually some of that money gets down to the artist. But for podcasts, those splits can be very different because podcasts don't have the same regulations and royalties and contracts involved. So often podcasts are potentially much more profitable for Spotify. So I think from a business and financial standpoint, you can see why this was such an easy decision for Spotify. Now I think another question we can ask is, would this situation have played out differently if a different artist had been involved? Maybe really a bigger artist like Guns N' Roses or Michael Jackson or the Beatles, or maybe a more modern artist like Maroon 5 or Bruno Mars, somebody like that. There's no way to know for sure, but personally, I don't think it would have really made any difference. I think the outcome would have been the same. Joe Rogan's podcast is just so big and so popular, and it keeps so many people on the Spotify platform. I think you can argue that it's, the single most valuable asset that they have. Now, let's return to my original question of what this means for the status of musicians and their place in society. In some ways, there has always been a stigma around musicians as being, lazy, sort of dreamer types that have some kind of self-centered, overinflated ego where they don't want to work a real job and they just want people to love whatever they do. I mean, imagine if you have a teenage daughter and she brings home her new boyfriend and you find out that he's a musician. A lot of people might cringe at that. Even fathers that are musicians themselves might cringe at that. I'm not saying that everybody would, but in certain circles, that stigma has always been there. However, I would argue that if a musician can have a successful career and become financially successful at what they do, then that negative stigma is largely overshadowed by their financial success, and people just end up celebrating them as an entertainer and as someone that contributes good art to society. But in this situation, it is clearly Joe Rogan, the podcaster, who has the larger financial success compared to Neil Young, the veteran musician. And I think 20 years ago or so, this would have not played out the way it did. So in that regard, I think this is a sign that the status of musicians and their place in society is diminishing. The other thing that comes to mind with all of this is how many new podcasts there are. Everybody and their grandma has started a podcast. There's been an explosion of them. It kind of reminds me of the mid-90s when every new rock singer that came out sounded like Eddie Vedder. Everyone was doing it. To me, that's a big sign as well, because people tend to emulate success and not failure. And with so many new people getting into the podcasting arena, that says a lot to me right there. I can even look at my personal experience on this issue, because when I do a video that's more like a podcast, sort of like this video, a lot of people watch it. A lot of people give me feedback, enjoy it, and so forth. If I release a video of my music, basically no one watches it. Okay, guys, anyway, I want to hear from you on this. But let's try to stay focused on the main issue that I've been talking about in this video, which is podcasters versus musicians and how they rank in our society. I'd rather not get bogged down on the particular medical issue that this all stems from. I know that's probably wishful thinking on my part. Anyway, guys, again, let me know what you think of all of this stuff down in the comments section below. Again, I will have a link to that article that I was reading in the video down in the video description. And guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.